What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and we're finally circling back to content we didn't get to make that I promised I would. So we're going all the way back to August to Bigby's Glory of the Giants to talk about the Bigby's Glory of the Giant monsters G through Z. So first up, we have the Gargantua here, which is this chap that you see right above my head here. It is an aberration, which even though it looks like a giant, perhaps once a generation under a particular configuration of stars and planets, or at the whim of some malicious god, a Gargantua is born to giant parents. Though it appears like any other giant of its kind, its true nature manifests upon reaching adulthood. Its complexion turns purplish and horns sprout from its head, and then it grows significantly larger, as you can see. Oh, there's like an elk. Give me perspective. So it is an aberration. Has some resistances one would expect from an aberration: force, psychic, frightened immunity. Challenge rating 21, so pretty sizable creature, or, formidable foe. Has a weird aura. At the start of each of its turns, each creature of its choice within 30 feet must make a wisdom saving throw, or be targeted by their worst fears, taking 5d6 psychic damage and getting the frightened condition until the start of their next turn. If you succeed, you're immune. We have a slam and a rock attack. Pretty standard giant stuff. Then bonus actions here. We have Baleful Hex. It curses one creature within 120 feet that must make a wisdom save or be incapacitated until the end of its next turn. And then it also has a bonus action 120-foot teleport. And it has two reactions. Flick, where immediately after it takes damage from a larger, smaller creature within 20 feet of itself, it tends to basically flick them away. They must make a strength save or take 3d6 plus 8 bludgeoning damage and be pushed up to 100 feet away and knocked prone. That is a massive flick. As long as they're within 20 feet, you can send them up to 100 feet away and they take some damage. We also have Spell Mimicry once per day. Immediately after a creature casts a spell of 5th level or lower, the Gargantua can try to copy it by making a Charisma saving throw. And once the creature must succeed on a Charisma saving throw, or the Gargantua immediately casts the same spell with a plus 11 to hit and a DC 19. That's nuts. All right. Giant Goose. Not a lot to write home about. It's a giant goose. It is a fey creature, not a beast, which is kind of a bummer. It does understand languages and can't speak it. Can make a beak attack, a wing attack, and even though it's wielding a sword in its beak here, it doesn't have a sword attack, but it does have a thunderous honk, which recharges on a 5/6, which is each creature within 30 feet of it must make a con save, or take 3d10 thunder damage and be deafened until the start of the goose's next turn. And obviously this thunderous honk can be heard up to 300 feet away. Following suit, we also have a giant lynx, which is adorable looking here. It's like a purple lynx. Again, another fey creature. Would have been nice to just make these beasts to give the druids additional options, but either way. It does have True Sight and Lynx Sight, which allows it to cast Clairvoyance once a day. Woodland Camouflage to have advantage on stealth checks in undergrowth and snowy terrain. And then again, a Claw attack that also has a, if it moves, it can basically do almost like a pounce with a strength save to knock people prone. We have a giant ox, again, very similar. In this instance, once again a fey. Beast of Burden, so it can carry more stuff, and then just has a gore attack. And if it moves 20 feet, it can possibly do a knock prone ability as well. We have a giant ram. Once again, another giant animal that is a fey creature. This one has magic resistance as well as resistance to cold, fire, and lightning damage. I could see that potentially being part of the reason why they didn't make that particular one a beast, because that would allow the druid to gain those resistances if they were to transform. Has a ram attack that also does force damage, and again, if they move, they can make a strength saving throw to knock prone. It can shoot a 30-foot range force bolt, and also has Absorbent Fleece, which recharges on a 6. Immediately after it succeeds on a saving throw against a spell or spell attack misses it, it can make a Force Bolt attack. Again, that reaction recharges on a 6. We have a Giant Tick, which is a monstrosity, which is essentially the kind of ticks that we have in the real world. Just imagine a giant one that would probably prey on giants. And as such, has a proboscis here, which is pretty disgusting. It does piercing damage to the target, and then it attaches, basically. As an action, a creature within reach of it can try to detach it with a strength check. And if it's attached, it can do a blood drain, where it does 2d6 plus 3 necrotic damage to one creature it's attached to. Or 4d6 plus 3 necrotic if the creature is a giant. It's medium size, so it's the size of most player characters. And it regains hit points equal to the damage that it deals. We have a Gigant, which just looks like a giant ant, I guess. A Gigant is a towering insectile creature variously regarded as a harbinger of doom, a defender of nature, and a divine messenger of a mysterious purpose. Giants regard them as a plague. Some giants claim Gigants are created by the weird magical aura that surrounds a Gargantua, what we talked about. So this is a gargantuan monstrosity of a challenge rating 20. Has a spell-resistant carapace, which means it has advantage on saving throws against spells, and spell attack rolls have disadvantage against it. Has a multi-attack, 1 mandible, 2 talons. The mandible does slashing damage and a grapple. And then while grappled, you take damage at the start of each of its turns. The talons do slashing damage and pull you. It also has Scale Dust, which recharges on a 5/6. It releases magical dust from its wings in a 30-foot cube. Each creature in that area must make a con save or take 10d8 poison damage, half on a success. And then if they on a success or failure, they're poisoned for 1 hour. And while poisoned in this way, they cannot regain hit points. And then also has a bonus action of Drone. It produces a horrid droning, beating its wings. Each creature within 10 feet of the Gigant must make a DC 19 con save or take 3d6 thunder damage and have the incapacitated condition. And then it can fly up to half its movement speed. All right, now we're getting into more, like, actual things as opposed to, like, just weird giant creatures. Let's see. So we have the Goliath Giantkin. Goliaths are humanoids distinctly related to giants. I don't really know what makes this different than a traditional Goliath. Okay, well, whatever. I think it might just be a Goliath, right? So it's a humanoid, has some armor and a shield, has a spear attack, resistance to cold damage, and then it does have the giant strike ability that we saw introduced in feats in this book, where it can deal an extra 2d6 damage based on the type of giant that it's derived from. We have a Grinning Cat, which is really cool. Now, this should be a fey creature, and it is. Also very much a Cheshire Cat, for those of you who were here with me earlier. It's giving Cheshire Cat vibes, hard Cheshire Cat vibes. Just make this purple, and you're there. It is a large fey. It has magic resistance, a bite, and claws. If it was invisible when it uses its claws, the creature must make a strength save or be knocked prone. And if they're prone, the creature can make a bite. It can fade away, where it magically becomes invisible for 1 hour until it attacks, gradually fading away over the course of its turn. Yeah, this is the Cheshire Cat. It can choose to leave parts of its body visible, such as its tail, its head, or its grinning mouth. Any equipment the cat wears or carries is invisible with it. It can fade back as a bonus action, or teleport, which is known as a grinning step, up to 60 feet. We have a Hill Giant Avalancher. This is sort of a... We've had a series in here of, like, bumped up giant creatures that usually have class levels. This one is a Hill Giant Avalancher, which is a druid here. It will have a rune typically associated with it. This one has a hill rune. While holding or wearing an object bearing the rune, it can use Stone Avalanche action and the hill rebuff action. Again, that's another common thing we've seen with these types of giants. The rune that they're associated with gives them a couple of abilities. And then it has stats for the rune itself, how to remove it. 3 legendary resistances. a great club that does bludgeoning and thunder damage, as well as stone bolas, which again, if you don't know what a bola is, it's a ball, it's like a rock with another rock with a string connected, and usually throw it for tripping people. The giant conjures 3 stone balls connected by lines of magical force and throws them at one creature within 60 feet. They must make a dex save. On a failure, they're restrained until the start of the giant's next turn. And the stones erupt in a burst of thunderous energy that deals 46 thunder damage to the target and each creature within 10 feet of it. We do have some druidic spellcasting here. And we have the 2 unique abilities. Stone Avalanch. Conjures a hail of rocks in a 20-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder centered on the ground on a point within 120 feet. Each creature in there must make a dex save or take 86 bludgeoning damage and be knocked prone. The rocks then turn the area into difficult terrain. Or reaction here, Hill Rebuff. Immediately after the giant takes damage from a creature it can see within 10 feet, that creature must succeed on a DC 16 con save or take 3d6 force damage and be pushed horizontally 10 feet away from the giant. Moving on with, I think we've had several Hulks in here. Am I correct? Yeah, we now have the Lightning Hulk here, which again, is basically a massive elemental giant creature. Descended from Storm Giants, this one, an elemental, challenge rating 9. Has a bunch of damage resistances and condition resistances, which makes sense for a creature basically created from pure lightning. Also, as someone made of lightning, it produces illumination. And it can turn basically into animate lightning, which is what its lightning form ability is. The first time it enters a creature's space or begins its turn there, that creature takes 2d6 lightning damage. And then it can also move through narrow spaces without squeezing. And a creature that touches it or hits it with a melee attack takes 2d6 lightning damage. And then it has its one action here, Arc Lightning, which can be a melee or ranged attack of either 10 foot reach or a range of 60 feet that does 4d8 lightning damage. If the target is a creature, it can't take reactions until the start of its next turn, and lightning jumps from the target to another creature of the Hulk's choice within 30 feet of the initial target. The secondary target must make a dexterity saving throw or take 4d8 lightning damage. Then we start moving into Gnoll territory. We have the Maw of Yagu, which is an absolutely terrifying piece of art. Especially now that we have the non-AI version of it, which is even scarier, I think. Sorry about that. But anyway, hill giants are known for their appetites, and Yagu is known as the Beast of Butchery, basically a gnoll demon lord focused on the devouring of flesh and creation of more gnolls. So a Maw of Yagu is a hill giant that's made such a name for itself that Yagu has taken notice and basically has granted them powers based on their just the way they act and their veracity for eating things. So, a Maw of Yagu is a demon, which, because it is basically transformed by Yagu, has magic resistance, multi-attack in either 2 Bite Fang or Fang Fling attacks. The Bite is just 2d12 plus 6 piercing. The Fang Fling is a ranged attack that does a d10 plus 6 piercing, which I think we're literally throwing fangs at people. And then we have Goring Charge, where it moves its speed without provoking attacks of opportunity, essentially dragging its maw along the ground. Each time it enters a creature's space, they must make a strength save or take 3d12 plus 6 piercing and be grappled by this. If the creature is grappled, it has the prone condition, and while grappled, it is also restrained, as it's basically picking you up in its mouth. And then it also has Fanged Rebuke. In resistance to taking damage, the maw makes 1 bite attack against a random creature within 10 feet. If no creatures within its reach, it can make 2 Fang Fling attacks. Just disgusting. Next up, we have the Mist Hulk, which is again another one in the Hulk series. This is a Cloud Giant based elemental here. Resistance to thunder damage, poison damage, and a handful of immunities. Can turn into air, as most Hulks in this system can. It has a death burst, which I think a couple of them have that. Whereas basically when it dies, each creature within 10 feet must make a dexterity saving throw as it basically explodes and does 2d10 bludgeoning damage and knocks creatures prone if they fail that saving throw. On a success, they take half damage. Has a slam attack that does cold damage, which you can do 2. And then Hideous Wailing, which recharges on a 5 to 6. The Mist Hulk releases a wail infused with magical anguish. Each creature within 30 feet of it must make a DC 14 Wisdom save. A creature in the Mist Hulk space has disadvantage on the saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 46 psychic damage and is incapacitated for a minute. I think one of the last Hulks we have here is the Mud Hulk. This is a Hill Giant elemental here. Again, more on the earth side, resistance to acid. Can basically turn into mud, and then can make difficult terrain around it. Ground within it, 15 feet of it is difficult terrain. It has enveloping slam, similar to how sort of shambling mounds can engulf, is kind of what this is, right? It's 10-foot reach, does some bludgeoning damage. If the target is larger or smaller, they must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pulled into the elemental space, the Hulk space, and be engulfed inside the Mud Hulk. While engulfed, they can't breathe and are restrained and take a d12 acid damage at the start of each of their turns. When it moves, you move with it. You can only have one target engulfed at a time. An engulfed target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turn. On a success, it escapes. It also has Mud Splash. It lobs a mass of mud that splashes in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on a point within 30 feet of the Mud Hulk. Each creature there must make a dexterity saving throw or take 2d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage on a failed save, half on a success, and that area is now considered difficult terrain. Oops, I'm sorry, there's one more. We have the Rhy Hulk, which is based on a frost giant. I'm sure you could guess based on the name. Another elemental here has the Death Burst ability again. Some of them do, some of them don't. Has a slam attack that does bludgeoning damage plus cold damage, and then a Trail of Frost ability, which recharges on a 5-6. It moves up to its speed without provoking attacks of opportunity, and can move through the space of any medium or smaller creature. Each time the Rhy Hulk enters another creature's space for the first time on a turn, they must make a con save. On a failure, they take 4d10 cold damage, and their speed is reduced. Alright, we have the Sion... we have the Runic Colossus first. Which this is... essentially some sort of construct. Cloud and Frost Giants gathered rare metals, and Fire Giants shaped them into flexible joints and plated armor. Okay, so I guess it's basically just a guardian of some kind. It is a construct. It has a butt-ton of resistances and immunities. Very powerful in that respect. Also, again, challenge rating 21. It functions more or less like a golem, though. A mutable form, magic resistance, and siege monster abilities. 2 slam attacks that do bludgeoning damage, and then a stomp attack, which is... the slam and the stomp both have 20-foot reach. The stomp is a singular target, taking 4d10 plus 7 bludgeoning damage. If it's huge or smaller, it must make a dexterity saving throw or be knocked prone. While prone... until the Colossus uses its stomp again or moves, it's considered restrained. The restrained creature or another creature within 5 feet can use an action to make strength check to end that. We have Arcane Beam, which you can see it firing here, which recharges on a 5-6. It is a 150-foot line, 10 feet wide. Each creature in that area must make a dexterity saving throw or take 9d12 force damage, half on a success. And then has Spell Reflection Reaction twice per day, which is a ranged spell attack. We again use on one creature casting a spell of 5th level or lower. Does 4d12 force damage, and the target must make a DC 15 intelligence saving throw, or the spell fails and has no effect. Next up is the Sion of Giants gods. So these are basically demigods, for lack of a better term. We have Cradle of the Hill Scion. What is this one up here? I guess this is the Hill Scion. All right. Gargantuan Elemental. Challenge rating 22. Awakening of the Scion. The Cradle is a container for the Sion of Grantor. When the Cradle drops to 0 hit points, its body crumbles to dirt and moss. The Scion instantly appears in the space the Cradle occupied and uses the Cradle's initiative count. 5 legendary resistances, magic resistance, and siege monster. Multi-attack for 3 slams or spit rocks, or 1 any combination and 1 grasping root attack. Slams, spit rock, pretty standard. Grasping root has a 30-foot range, and it can grapple. Does damage until the grapple ends. Take damage at the start of each turn. And the root can obviously be severed. And then has Rolling Hills, which recharges on a 6. The Cradle magically creates a wave of dirt that extends from a point on the ground within 120 feet. The wave is up to 30 feet long, 30 feet tall, 30 feet wide. Each creature in the wave must make a DC 22 strength saving throw. On a failure, take 9d12 bludgeoning damage, be knocked prone, and is buried. On a successful save, you take half damage only. A buried creature is restrained, has total cover, can't breathe, and a creature can try to use an action to dig him out. I'm very confused. This is basically like the Cradle in which they're in, and then there is the Sion of Grantor. I guess there's going to be this... Oh, God, there's going to be this for every single one of these? Oh, yeah. This is a lot. I want to just get through this. So we have the Sion of Grantor, which is, again, I think the hill giant kind of god. So this is basically a high-level, high challenge rating, sort of almost god-like avatar, right, is what we're talking about here. The Sion of Grantor. A lot of damage resistances. 6 legendary resistances. This might be the most legendary resistances we've ever seen on a creature at all. Magic resistance, siege monster. Uses a great tree club, which does a bunch of bludgeoning damage. The target must make a saving throw or be pushed 100 feet horizontally. We have slam attacks and boulder attacks. We also have Inhale. It inhales a vortex of air in a 120-foot line, 15-foot wide. Each creature in that area that's huge or smaller must make a strength saving throw or be pulled up to 120 feet towards the Scion and be swallowed. Swallowed creature has the restrained condition, total cover against attacks and other effects outside the Scion, but they take 76 force damage at the start of each of the Scion's turn. It can hold 2 creatures in it. If it takes 60 damage or more on a single turn from a creature inside it, it must make a con save or throw them up. If the Scion dies, any swallowed creature no longer has the restrained condition. Has earth-shaking movement as a bonus action. It sends a shockwave through the ground in a 60-foot radius centered on itself. Each creature on the ground in that area must make a con save or lose concentration. And then as a reaction, it has this ability here called Feed. Immediately after taking damage, if it has at least 1 creature swallowed, it deals 3d6 force damage to the swallowed creature and gets 10 hit points back. And then there are regional effects for it as well. Next up, we have the Cradle of the Cloud Scion, which there's that, and then there's the Cloud Scion itself, Sion of Memnor. Oh boy, these are just, there's so much content here. I really didn't know people loved giants as much as people seem to do, that I'm learning from this book existing. I thought there was more other creatures that people enjoy more. Like the dragons was a no-brainer, right, with Fizzbands. But giants, not really my cup of tea. Not really sure how you guys feel. Let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious. All right. Cradle of the Cloud Scion is a challenge rating 26 with even more resistances and immunities. 624 hit points. Good luck. Again, it can awaken the Scion. The Cradle can fly when it has flyby, as well as legendary resistance, magic resistance, and siege monster. It also has multi-attack. It has a wind javelin, which has a 120-foot range, does bludgeoning and thunder damage. And then also has a vortex ability, as it's kind of a big one. It conjures a vortex at a point within 90 feet. It is 30-foot radius, 100-foot high cylinder. Creatures in that area must make a dexterity saving throw or take 11d12 bludgeoning and be restrained by the vortex. A creature restrained can attempt to escape with an athletics or acrobatics check. On a successful check, the creature escapes and moves 3d6 times 10 feet away from the vortex in a random direction. And then as a reaction, has a thunderclap immediately after taking damage. It unleashes a thunderclap in a 30-foot radius. All creatures in there must make a con save or take 48 thunder damage and be deafened for a minute. Then that was just the Cradle. Now we're into the Scion of Memnor. Again, a lot of the same stuff we saw. I think more hit points. Still has Flyby, has more legendary resistances, magic resistance, and siege monster. It now has the Cloud Morningstar, which the Cradle doesn't have, which does force damage and thunder damage. We have our Wind Javelin. We have a Thunderous Vortex, which is more or less the same thing, just the numbers are slightly changed. It's a 60-foot radius sphere on a spot within 120 feet. Each creature in the sphere must make a DC 24 strength save or be pulled straight towards the center. When a burst of thunder erupts, ending in an unoccupied space as close as possible, then a thunder burst erupts, 30-foot radius. Each creature in that area must takes 8d12 thunder damage. There's no save on that. You just take 8d12 thunder damage and must succeed on a DC 24 con save or be stunned until the end of your next turn. Then we have the Fog of Deception. Again, 30-foot radius sphere centered on a point within 90 feet. Each creature in it must make a wisdom saving throw or be charmed. All right. We move on to the Stone Scion. First up, we have, yet again, our Stone Scion Cradle. Oy, so much stuff here. Again, not as tough as some of the other ones, but still almost 500 hit points. 5 legendary resistances, magic resistance, siege monster, slam attack, the ability to spit rocks, and a shattering roar, which is each creature within 60 feet must make a con save or take thunder damage and be incapacitated. We have Crystal Flare as a bonus action. The Cradle causes the crystals on its body to flare. Each creature within 30 feet must make a con save or take radiant damage and be blinded. Or Stone Spikes. The Cradle causes the ground in a 20-foot square within 90 feet to sprout crystal spikes that become difficult terrain, and creatures take damage if they walk 5 feet through it. The Cradle hatches the Scion of Scoreus, which is, again, kind of an earth giant situation here. Legendary resistance, magic resistance, siege monster. Again, multi-attack. We have a Crystal Club now that does bludgeoning damage, and then it says hit or miss. The Scion can cause the club to flare with bright light, and the target must make a DC 22 con save or take 48 radiant damage and have the blinded condition until the start of the Scion's next turn. So you can do that even if you hit or miss. You have a slam attack, Runic Boulder, which is a ranged attack, which also has a hit or miss ability. The boulder explodes. Creatures within 30 feet must make a dexterity saving throw or take force damage and be knocked prone. We also have Entombing Grasp, which recharges on a 6. The Scion wreathes its hand in petrifying magic and touches one huge or smaller creature within 20 feet. They must make a dexterity saving throw or take 86 force damage and have the grappled condition. At the start of the Scion's turn, if the target is still grappled, the target then becomes petrified. And then again, we have the earth-shaking movement that allows you to force concentration checks. All right, we have the Cradle of the Storm Scion. We're almost through. Again, lots of hit points. 682 hit points, tons of resistances. Legendary resistance, magic resistance, siege monster, slam attack, and a spit hailstone ability, which is very similar to spit rock. It just does cold damage instead of all bludgeoning. We also have a lightning barrage on a recharge of a 5/6. The Cradle hurls multiple magical lightning bolts at up to 2 creatures within 500 feet of itself. The targets must make a dexterity saving throw or take 11d12 lightning damage and be stunned until the end of their next turn. And then the other reaction here is Booming Step. Immediately after taking damage, the Cradle cracks with thunder and then magically teleports up to 60 feet. Each creature within 10 feet of the space it left must make a con save or take thunder damage, half on a success. Then we have the Scion of Stronmouse. Stronmouse? I don't know how you say it. But again, this is just the actual Scion itself. A lot of increases. We have Flyby now on top of all the other resistances. We have a Lightning Sword, which does force damage and lightning damage. Again, hailstone abilities and a slam. Then we have our unique abilities here. Bonus action, Vengeful Storm, which recharges on a 6. Conjures a churning storm in a 30-foot radius, 10-foot tall cylinder on a point within 120 feet. The area is heavily obscured. Cloud lasts for a minute until the Scion dies or when the Scion uses this bonus action again. When the cloud appears, and as a bonus action on later turns, the Scion can move the cloud up to 30 feet and cause one of the following effects. In a 30-foot radius, 120-foot high cylinder. Acid Rain. The cloud rains acid. Each creature must make a con save in the acid for recovered in acid for 1 minute. Creature covered in acid takes 4d12 damage at the start of each of its turn. Freezing Storm, which creatures must make a dex save or take cold damage and be hindered by the icy formations for 1 minute. Their speed is reduced to 0. Or Lightning Bolts, make a dexterity saving throw or just take 48 lightning damage and be stunned until the start of its next turn. Next up here we have the Fire Scion, which has, again, a Cradle, which has all of the things we've come to know the Cradles have. But obviously now we're switching for more fire damage. We have Hurl Lava, which again is a singular kind of target damage from a distance that can set things on fire. And if a creature within 5 feet of the fire damage takes an action to douse the fire, the target takes 3d6 fire damage at the start of each of its turn. We also have Erupting Breath, which is a 90-foot cone, recharge on a 5/6. The creatures in the area must make a dexterity saving throw or take 10d10 fire damage and be poisoned for a minute. On a successful save, they only take the fire damage, or half as much. Creature Poison must make a con save at the end of each of its turns, ending it on a success. And a bonus action, we have Lava Geyser. The cradle causes lava to erupt from it within 120 feet of itself. Each creature in a 20-foot radius, a 50-foot high cylinder, must make a dex save or take fire damage. Then we have the Sion of Surtur, the fire kind of titan. Legendary resistances, magic resistances, true sight, all the things we've seen so far. We have a Lava Blade, which does slashing damage and fire damage. A Lava Ball, which again is ranged, does fire damage and can knock prone. We have the Lava Wave, which recharges on a 5/6. They emit a wave from either their blade, hands, or mouth in a 90-foot cone. Creatures in the area must make a dex saving throw. On a failure, they take 11d10 fire damage and are restrained as the rock begins to harden and embed them. Creatures can take an athletic check to try to break out, or another creature can attack it. We have the Earth-Shaking Movement, again, to break concentration. And then we also have Incendiary Smoke. The Scion causes smoke and white-hot embers to billow from its skin, filling a 30-foot radius sphere centered on itself. While the Scion's skin billows smoke, ranged attacks have disadvantage. A creature that moves into the smoke for the first time on a turn or starts it there must make a con save or take 46 fire damage. And it stops billowing smoke after a minute or when it dies, or if it uses a bonus action to stop it. The last Scion is up here, the Frost Giant Scion. First up, we have the Cradle, which again has all the things we've expected from the Cradles, a slam attack, a ranged attack that knocks prone. We have a Freezing Breath, which is a 90-foot cone for a con save to take cold damage and have your speed reduced to 0. If the damage would reduce the target to 0 hit points, the target drops to 1 instead and is petrified within the ice. If the statue takes bludgeoning damage, it shatters, killing the frozen creature. If the statue would take fire damage, it instead takes no damage and thaws, ending the petrification. And then as a bonus action, it has Chilling Mist, which it conjures a cloud within 30-foot radius, centered on a point within 90 feet. Each creature there must make a con save or take cold damage and be unable to use reactions until the start of its next turn. Then we get to the final Scion, the Scion of Thrym, which again is the Frost Giant one, has all of the stuff, again, we've come to expect. We have an Ice Axe here that does force damage and cold damage, a slam attack, a ranged attack that does bludgeoning and cold damage and with a knock prone. Then we have Glacial Upheaval on a recharge on a 5/6. It digs its hand into the ground at a point it can see within 30 feet of itself and launches a magically conjured mass of ice into the air. 30-foot radius, 100-foot high cylinder. Each creature there must make a dex save or take 8d8 bludgeoning or 3d12 cold and is pushed vertically to the top of the pillar, at which point the creature falls. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage and is pushed to the nearest unoccupied space outside the cylinder with no additional effect. It is 100-foot high, so it would do all the 8d8 plus 3d12, then push them up 100 feet, and then they would drop and take an additional 10d6 damage. At the start of the Scion's next turn, a massive ice plummets to the ground on a point the Scion can see within 60 feet that the Scion dug its hands into. Each creature in a 30-foot radius, 100-foot high sphere must make a dex save or take bludgeoning and cold damage. And then a bonus action here again, Earth-shaking movement. All right, we're getting towards the end here. For next up, we have a Spectral Cloud, which is a pretty cool-looking creature, attacking this very purple wizard or so on. This is an undead, surprising nobody, has undead-style resistances. It does have a blurred form, which makes attack rolls against it at disadvantage, unless the attacker is within 15 feet. So this is kind of like a range-based Cloak of Displacement. It's also a cloud, so incorporeal movement makes sense. It can make 2 spectral touch attacks, which are 10-foot reach, that do force damage and necrotic damage, and force a saving throw. That reduce the creature's hit point maximum by the amount taken of the necrotic damage. That lasts until you finish a long rest. A humanoid slain by this attack rises as a specter under the Spectral Cloud's control. And then also has Chilling Winds that recharge on a 5/6. It emits intensely cold wind in a 60-foot line that is 10 feet wide. Each creature there must make a DC 20 con save, or take 7d10 cold damage and be incapacitated for a minute. We have a Spotted Lion. Hey, an actual beast. This is a challenge rating 3, the Spotted Lion. It does have a nice armor class of 15 and 66 hit points, which is nice. Does also get the benefit of Pack Tactics, which is beautiful for advantage. And because it is a beast, that means that druids have the opportunity to transform into it. It has a Rend ability that does 2d8 plus 6 piercing damage. And if the lion moved 20 feet straight towards the target before they hit, the target must make a DC 16 strength save or be knocked prone. If it's prone, it can make another Rend as a bonus action. We have this creature here, the Stalker of Baphomet. Again, another Demon Lord based. There's Merciless Hunter, the Prince of Beasts also crafts complex mazes as his hunting grounds. Stone giants can become mesmerized by the Demon Lord's mazes. All right, so that basically changes a giant into a follower Stalker of Baphomet, which turns them into a fiend, gives them a couple resistances. They now have Labyrinthine Recall and magic resistance. They have a Glaive that does slashing and force damage. Still have rock throws that can knock people prone. We also have Erupting Horns that recharges on a 5/6. Choose an area within 60 feet of yourself. 6 horn-shaped stones erupt in a 30-foot radius, 30-foot high cylinder centered on that point. Each creature in that area must make a dex save. On a failed save, they take 60-10 piercing damage and are pushed up to 30 feet upward and then fall. I really like these. Do the damage, push people up, and then make them fall. It's a nice little feature there. Then has a couple of spells. All right. Then we have a Stone Giant of Evil Earth. Continuing on with our sort of Cult of Elemental Evil giants. This is the stone giants that have kind of given themselves over to the Prince of Elemental Earth, Ogremok. As such, they are still a giant, but they have a little more earth-related abilities here. We have a Thundering Stone Club, which does bludgeoning damage and thunder damage. You can cause the club, rather, to emit the thunderous energies that can hit anybody within 30 feet of the club once per turn. We have Boulders, and then we have Unyielding as a reaction in response to failing a saving throw to avoid being moved, having the prone condition, or both. The giant can just succeed. We have a Stone Giant Rock Speaker. Ash Crimson, thank you so much for coming to hang out. Good luck with Tomb of Annihilation. Stone Giant Rock Speaker here. Again, a kind of one of more of the upgraded giant types. This is a wizard. So we have challenge rating 16, 3 legendary resistances, and then again has a stone rune that will give it 2 unique abilities. We have the Prism Staff that you can see here, which does bludgeoning and radiant damage. We have Exploding Geode. The giant throws a geode at a point within 60 feet, which explodes in a 20-foot radius sphere. This is basically like every other giant's rock throw, except theirs is kind of a grenade as opposed to just a rock. On a failed save, the targets take piercing damage and radiant damage and have the blinded condition. After the giant throws the geode, roll a d6. On a 4 or lower, it is out of geodes. And we have Prismatic Ray, which also requires the stone rune, which is kind of the big one. All right, so it emits a beam of light, the 60-foot cone, DC 17 dex save, and then each creature in the area rolls a d6 to determine what happens. If you roll a 1 or a 2, you take 10d6 radiant damage and are blinded until the end of the giant's next turn. 3 or a 4, 10d6 necrotic damage and are frightened until the end of the giant's next turn. Or sapping green, 10d6 force damage and the incapacitated condition until the end of the giant's next turn. We have a Storm Crab, which is a monstrosity, unfortunately. So all of you Druid fans, you will not be able to get to turn into this challenge rating 11 crab creature, which is awesome because I love crabs, so I'm on board. We got resistances, we got amphibious. Its claws do a fair amount of bludgeoning damage, and if you're huge or smaller, it grapples you. It also has 4 claws, so it can grapple up to 4 creatures. And unlike most crabs, it has a stinger with a 10-foot reach that does piercing damage, and you must succeed a con save or be poisoned and paralyzed for a minute, which is wild. And then also has a ranged water jet attack, which recharges on a 5 to 6. That's a dragon turtle. Oh, it is. In its claws, that's a dragon turtle being attacked by the storm crab. All right. Go storm crab. You're hurting a dragon turtle. That's nuts. Has its water jet, 150-foot line, 10 feet wide. Dex save or bludgeoning damage and be pushed and knocked prone. We have the Storm Giant Tempest Caller, which is, again, our upgraded version of a Storm Giant, which will have, this one has Alert, Amphibious, Legendary Resistances, and then we'll have, it has Scrying from the Storm Room, which you basically use it as a crystal ball. And then, again, we have our attacks, and then we'll have another ability tied, excuse me, to the Storm Rune. So we have a Lightning Blade, which does slashing and lightning damage. A Lightning Lance, which has a long range to do lightning damage. We have some spellcasting. Probably one of the biggest ones to take note of would be Time Stop. That's pretty good. And then Tempest Call, which requires the Storm Rune, creates an elemental vortex in a 60-foot radius sphere centered on itself. Each creature in that area other than the giant must make a dex save or take 8d8 plus 7 damage of its choice, cold, lightning, or thunder, half on a success. We have a Storm Herald, which you can see here, which is weird tentacle hair. Storm Herald, ancient and alien beings dwell of slumber in ocean depths, awaiting cosmic circumstances that signals their time to rise. Again, unsurprisingly, an aberration. Has a couple of psychic and kind of Great Old One style resistances. Amphibious and magic resistance. Has some claws that do pretty decent damage, as well as these tentacles, which have a 10-foot reach, do bludgeoning damage, and causes the creature, if they're large or small, to have the grappled condition, which also restrains them and does psychic damage to them at the start of each of the turn that they're grappled. Also comes with a trident that does piercing damage, plus lightning damage. And then has a Psychic Wave. The Herald unleashes a blast of psionic energy into the minds of up to 3 creatures within 90 feet. They must make an intelligence saving throw or take psychic damage and be stunned for a minute. On a success, you just take half damage. A creature that is reduced to 0 hit points by this psychic damage dies and its head explodes, if it has one. And then we have some psionics. Nothing too crazy there. We have a Tempest Spirit, which you can kind of see here. Tempest Spirit, a storm giant, can escape death through a mystical ritual that transforms the giant into a semi-conscious storm, which is what we're seeing here. An undead, interesting. Challenge rating 15, a bunch of resistances that make sense for an undead. Incorporeal movement also makes sense. You're literally a living storm. Legendary resistance, we have Lightning Fist, which does some lightning damage. Hailstone, which is a ranged bludgeoning and cold damage. We have Death Bolt, which is a lightning bolt in a 120-foot line, 10 feet wide. Each creature in that line must make a dex save for 68 lightning damage plus 3d10 necrotic. On a success or failure, an unaffected creature's hit points maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the necrotic damage taken. The reduction lasts until a long rest. Creature dies if its maximum hit points is reduced to 0. And then as a bonus action has Hailstorm, which recharges on a 5/6. Conjure a Hailstorm, 20-foot radius, 40-foot high, within 120 feet of itself. Make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes bludgeoning damage and cold damage and is also prone. And then we have the Titano, which is a beast, which is cool. Family of enormous mammals related to the rhinoceros. Some of them lack any horns, some have more than one. Is a challenge rating 5 beast with 16 natural armor and a decent amount of hit points. Has Beast of Burden, so it can carry more stuff. And then has a stomp attack, which does bludgeoning damage. And if it moved at least 20 feet before making that attack, the target takes an extra 3d8 bludgeoning damage and must make a strength save or be knocked prone. Next up here we have some trolls. Only a couple, though, it looks like. We have a troll amalgam. A troll amalgam forms when multiple trolls fuse together. Oh, God, that's terrifying. During regeneration. This sometimes occurs when many trolls are slain in a single battle. When the troll parts are thrown into the carnal pits or mass graves, they sometimes turn into this disgustingness. All right, let's see. Gargantuan Giant. Troll-based resistances. Also has the regeneration, needs acid or fire to kill it. Has a rend with its claws for slashing damage. And then has bonus action Fling Limb 3 times per day. As a ranged attack, does bludgeoning damage. If the limb hits a medium or smaller creature, the target has the grappled condition. The limb has the statistics of a troll amalgam, except for the following. It is medium, has 45 hit points, its speed is 30 feet, and it doesn't have a challenge rating or legendary resistances, and the only action it can take is the attack action, which it can only use to grapple. Until the grapple ends, the target has the restrained condition and takes 48 plus 7 slashing damage at the start of each of its turns. If the limb is not destroyed within 24 hours of being flung, roll a d12. On a roll of a 12, the limb regenerates into a troll. And then we have the, oh God, the Troll Mutate. When exposed to corrupting alien energy, such as found around the Far Realm or throughout the Underdark, a troll can undergo strange mutations. It's still considered a giant. It now has telepathy, though, and blind sight. The mutation is created. It gains one of 4 possible body mutations at random. Elastic Mind, Psionic Mirror, Spell Scarred, or Winged Form. Amorphous comes from Elastic Body. It can squeeze through a space 1 inch wide. Magic Resistance comes from Spell Scarred. It's just magic resistance. Psychic Rebuke comes from the Psionic Mirror only. If the mutate takes psychic damage, each creature within 20 feet of it takes that damage as well. And then it still has Troll Regeneration, as expected. And then we have multi-attack for Rens that, let's see, it's got a 5-foot reach or 15 foot if it has the Elastic Body mutation, and does slashing and force damage. And then it also has Psychic Burst, which says, recharges on a 5/6. The mutate unleashes a wave of psychic energy. Each creature within 30 feet of the mutate must make a DC 14 intelligence saving throw, or take 8d6 psychic damage on a failed save or half on a success. And then also there is potentially the 30-foot fly speed if it chooses the winged form. And that, finally, has covered the entirety of Bigby's Glory of the Giants Monsters. We did our original video a while back that was Bigby's Monsters A through F. This is Bigby's Glory of the Giant Monsters G through Z. There's a lot there, so, feel free to look in the description for the timestamps when this comes out, and you can skip ahead to the ones you want. Otherwise, thank you for putting up with this video. Also, again, for those of you watching on YouTube, we actually streamed this on Twitch, so if you want to come see this live and provide feedback or otherwise, feel free to do so. So, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.